Entertalk Radio, you're in to all things music.
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. You are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. And I am Scott, your host, and a man who is celebrating 7 big years in business for my company this week. Yay. And, it goes by so fast, I got to say. And with me on the air today is Hans Gruber. What is up, Hans?
Doing good.
Intern Hans.
Yeah, it's me.
All right. I'm going to do my John McClane for you, for the audience. Here we go. Pretty tricky with that accent, Hans. Should be on TV with that accent. That's what I'm talking about. Are you Officer John McClane of the Detroit Police Department? New York Police Department. There we go. Well, fun. It's good to have you, Hans. How are things going? You guys are making do without Paul, who is sick.
Yeah, he's
sicker than usual.
Caught something. We're making do without him.
Paul caught something. That's the title of a press release right there. That's the title of a new show coming up. What did Paul catch this week, ladies and gentlemen? Well, who's to say? He's a guitar player, and we know what happens with those kind of people. All right, well, moving on. Good to have you with us, Hans. If you could mute your mic, because I'm hearing a nice delay. Thank you. So who am I? I am Scott. I run a company that is 7 years old called Robertson Communications. If you want to reach me, here's how. On email, scott@robertsoncom.com, 2 M's. On the website, it's robertsoncom.com, 2 M's like communications. And on social media, @robertsoncom on Twitter and facebook.com/robertsoncom, 2 M's and all that. And you guys are super duper 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 smart because you have tuned into episode 116 of the big show. And I call this one Nobody Talks Like That. You know, something happens to people when they become educated and they learn a bunch of new fancy sounding words. They start to use them in their writing and in their communications. And sometimes this stuff bleeds over into our line of work. You string enough of this stuff together, and you got a giant mess that no one's going to understand. So why does it happen? How does it happen? And how can you, as the voice of reason, for your company's marketing communication efforts, make sure it's not happening to you? So we're going to dig into all of this, and we're going to take a fresh look at who's winning and losing today. It's going to be another award-winning, at least award-nominated episode of May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media. So let's dig right into it. We're going to talk about just confusion in our words and our writing. So why does that sort of happen? I think there's a few reasons that I want to lay out for you here now. The reason that you get so much stuff that is like basically cannot even decipher in people in writing, especially in marketing communications, there's a couple of reasons. One of them is we want to sound more impressive. People want to sound like they're in the know, and they want to sound more impressive. It's a ego-based kind of thing, and so they string a lot of words together that make them kind of sound smart. So after you read their stuff, you're like, well, that person sounds smart. And there are times and places when that can work, and there are times and places where that shouldn't be happening, and it definitely isn't going to work. Another reason is, we're taught that way. Going back into all of our academic careers and then all the way up into kind of, college and even grad school, when you're writing something, you must sound like you know what the heck you're talking about. You must sound intelligent. And we all learn as we grow up through the system ways to sound intelligent. Even if we don't necessarily know what we're talking about, we can certainly sound as if we do. It is a bit of a game that we play in the academic world. We use, fancy multi-syllabic words, syllables flying around everywhere, fancy long sentences, buzzwords, stuff like that really kind of, sound like somebody knows what they're talking about. And that can be fine. And in academia, that certainly works. We've all done it, to be honest. Anybody that's written anything, you've done it too. But obviously, that has no place in the marketing communications side of things. Just for a lot of reasons that we're going to get into. But the last reason I think why it doesn't happen is that I think secretly some people would prefer if you really didn't understand what they were saying. This happens in the legal realm. I mean, let's be honest. Have you ever read a bill that goes to Congress? I defy you to understand what that stuff says. Like I said, I have a master's degree in corporate communications. I read stuff into Congress, and I have no earthly idea what it says. And that's on purpose, right? The legal profession is sort of trained to talk in its own language and talk in some language to where you don't actually know what's being said. I'm not saying we go full emoji and like have bills in Congress that are made up of strings of emoji, but some sentences that human beings could understand probably wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And sometimes, companies, CEOs, executive management, that kind of thing, they're just so incredibly full of it that they string words together that kind of makes that just kind of sounds, impressive, and there's a lot of, buzzwords that we could use. In fact, let's just talk about let's talk about a couple things. So it was National Grammar Day on March 4th. So, and basically there is a society called the Promotion of Good Grammar, SPOGG. And, by the way, the mixers at the Society for the Promotion of Good Grammar, off the chain. I mean, you want to see some people that can party. I mean, you want to get into a good party. The Society for the Promotion of Good Grammar, that is second to none. I've never actually been there. So anyway, good grammar. So here's a list of things that they publish that say these are things that used to be bad grammar, but now we sort of, at one point these were all considered quote unquote bad English, but now we just sort of accept them. And this is kind of related to what we're talking about today. So above, the word above. Both the adjective in the above explanation and the noun in the above is the explanation annoyed lots of people in the 19th and 20th century. Above, I don't know. It doesn't. That one doesn't necessarily make me upset, but some people maybe. Finalize. Interesting thing that the word finalize was common in Australia and New Zealand in the 20s, but really was not. It was not a good word in the United States for a long time. Finalize. Making some, the IZE ending right there. Mentality. The word used to mean mode or way of thought or outlook. It bothered some folks in the early 20th century. And there's a lot of those. So my point in here is that, grammar is a bit of a moving train, right? It kind of depends on where you are in history as to what you can use. But what you see in business quite a bit and around marketing communications in particular is a bunch of stuff that is just sort of, just sort of BS, right? It's just sort of, it's not getting the root cause of, it's not handling the root job of communication. So let's just go over that real quick. The main thing that communication should do, right? Communication model. Sender, receiver, and there's an arrow between them, right? So the sender sends out a message. It's the arrow, goes to the receiver. Hopefully the receiver is able to decode the message and get pretty much the same meaning, hopefully the exact same meaning that the sender intended. When that happens, that is called communication, right? We're all taught that. So that's the goal. But you see some other goals start to kind of creep in there. Aside from the let's get the message from sender to receiver and watch out, for interference and that sort of thing. But it's like, but if people want to sound more impressive, then they make that kind of the primary goal, kind of ego-driven goal. And then they forego the other goal, which is the number one goal, which is make sure that people understand what the hell it is that you're talking about, And there are a few, I'm gonna list for you a few types of language where this kind of happens. So number one, and marketing's so guilty of this, sentences that are created with a bunch of words that all start with the same letter, like, create, collaborate, cure, that kind of thing, and it's a cute trick, you're super clever. You have a mastery of the vocabulary you have great mastery of the vocabulary, put it down and figure out how to do the sender message receiver thing. It's been done. Move on. It does not, we've all done it. I've done it. I've created stupid things that have like one, they all start with the same letter or whatever. And again, it's just, it's a little bit of a magic trick for those of us that write that can be like, yeah, we can put words together and isn't it awesome when they all kind of start with the same letter? And then, and since it is, a magic trick is a good word for that because we do that so that other people around us in the organization will kind of sit back and go, oh, wow, how did you do that? How did you do that? And that must be good marketing. It is not good marketing. It is not good marketing unless it does what, class? Unless sender, receiver, message, and we interpret the same way, right? The number one goal is not that we sound super clever and not that we impress our peers, not that we can do close-up word magic and that kind of stuff. It's none of that. The way, the measure of communications is, did we communicate? Don't ever forget that. And people say, oh, Scott, that's really obvious. Would you like me to show you about a million examples that I could pull from today that where you're reading something and you're like, there's a bunch of words here, but I have no idea what the hell this is trying to say. That's a failure of communication, right? And as I mentioned to you, like when I were talking about bills in Congress, some of that's intentional. Then in the legal profession, it's definitely intentional. It's set up so that they can kind of lock the door and throw away the key behind all of the members of their profession, and they can kind of make sure everybody's got work. I mean, that's obvious, and but important to know. So let's so again, words that start with all the same letter. It's cute, it's neat, great, good for you. You're clever. Don't do that. Focus on sender and receiver stuff first. If it happens to have the same kind of letters and you can do a little magic at the end of it, but you have communicated what you're trying to do, then, okay. Next is flowery, and that's just using too many words. I got a thing from my kids' school this week, and they said, we are excited to help propel your daughter into excellence. No, what does that even mean? I mean, nobody, I sat there for a second and I was like, okay, yeah, cool. But then I was like, I have no idea what you're trying to say. Are you trying to say that she is not excellent? In which case, who the hell are you to talk about my daughter? And the second thing is propel into excellence. Nobody talks like that. Nobody says those words. If I'm out at a party and they say, well, Scott, I see you've really propelled your daughter into excellence. Well done. She's excellent. It's like no human beings put those words together to communicate that. They'll say 100 other things before they'll say that because it's bull crap. It's not clear. It's not, be clear, clarity. That's the goal of communication, clarity, right? And save all your Shakespearean prose for your solo album. I mean, do that somewhere else, but don't do that on the company's dime when you're trying to do communications. And don't let people that work with you in communications do it either, especially the CEO. I am talking to you guys. You guys don't know how to communicate. That's why you have communications people. Trust me, I've met you. I know. So the flowery stuff, just using too many words, too many words. It's just they're trying to create a poem or a sonnet or something when they just need to speak and tell me what you're trying to do. What they're really trying to say is, we're going to really try hard to make sure your daughter gets a B in this next geometry test. See, that I understand, right? I know the test is coming, but propel into excellence, what the hell are we even talking about, right? Again, be clear. Be clear. Another thing I find in technology all the time is acronym central, man. There are so many three-letter acronyms, or as I call them, TLAs. There are so many three-letter acronyms floating around, four-letter acronyms floating around for everything. And you ever read one of these things from a technology company, and they say, we have a robust, full solution for your products and data management and warehousing and storage and stuff. And we use the certified ISO 9001 XP39 space modulator, insert TLAs here. And they use that because the message that they're trying to send is, hey, we're really smart. You can trust us, right? Our job in communications, sender, receiver, message, right? If the receiver doesn't have the code key, if they didn't open the Cracker Jack box and figure out what the TLAs mean, then they don't know what the hell you're talking about. And your number one goal of getting message from sender to receiver fails miserably. And it fails at the acronym part, right? Really, really important for technology companies. Do not ever assume that people have the same exact knowledge of acronyms that you do. We talked last week a little bit on the show about emojis, right? Emojis, exactly the same thing. Did you know there are strings of emojis that if you put them together, there starts to be a common vocabulary that, this means this means this, and this means this. But if you're outside that club, if you're too old for that club and you don't get it, then you're not going to understand. And obviously, when you're talking about kids and parents, that is sort of the goal, right? Little secret code action, and if you're in the club, you're in, that kind of thing. But when we're talking about marketing and communications, we certainly don't want that. It interrupts goal number one, which we're trying to get the message across. So watch out for acronyms. Acronyms can be a really big problem. And the last one is the 25-cent word syndrome. People that use big, old, multi-syllabic words, instead of words that they should use. I was working on a project recently, and they wanted to use the word flourishing. But no people that I know use the word flourishing. It's not a word that's in the common vocabulary. It's like kind of a Shakespearean, yes, Duke Robertson, I understand that you are now flourishing. It's not something that is used by people, and musicians don't even know what it means. So I would definitely not recommend that. And it's a word that is used in place of a word that you can be much clearer. You can be much clearer when you can say, you can use a substitute word. In journalism school, one of the things, I had a professor that used to clap syllables when he was reading your stuff, and he would kind of clap out, things and make sure. And then he told me, he said, make sure I'm not clapping a lot, which means don't put a lot of syllables in the words. Make sure your sentences are short, make sure your syllables are tight, and make sure you're not just throwing syllables out there just to sound impressive and cool and all of those kind of things. Because we're talking about how nobody talks like that on this episode of May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Radio. The undisputed leader in music biz talk. Come on back. We're going to talk about who's winning and losing this week. We'll be flourishing. See you in a few.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording number one hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Entertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on EntertalkRadio.com.
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey, everybody, it is Friday. You are super smart because you're tuned in to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media, the undisputed leader on Music Biz Talk. I am Scott, your host for the hour here, and hanging out with Hans Gruber, the intern, who's just trying to hold it all together in Paul's absence. How's it going on down there, Hans? Is it going good?
We're living. We're surviving.
You're surviving. Maybe Paul's listening at home. Paul, if you're doing a Ferris Bueller, man, and you're like out right now with the car, and you're like have ducked out of work, and I think we're gonna find out. I gotta tell you that if you're just faking it, you know this world is far too transparent. Somebody check Paul's Instagram. You know what? He's the sausage king of Chicago, showing up at the restaurant over there. Well, cool. Let's talk about who's winning and losing this week in the big world. Shall we start with some artificial intelligence? People are like, yeah, start with some kind of intelligence. It's not going to happen on this show, but here we go. So, U.S. Army assures the public that its new robot tank system will not be dangerous. But it is driven by artificial intelligence. The Army has put out it's put out a private call to companies for ideas of how to improve its planned semi-autonomous AI-driven targeting systems for tanks. Check this out. Are you ready for an acronym? We're just talking acronyms. The Army asked for help enabling the Advanced Targeting and Lethality Automated System, or ATLAS. That is awesome. I'm sorry. To acquire, identify, and engage targets 3 times faster than the current manual process. Oh, man. Advanced Targeting and Lethality Automated System, or ATLAS. The military is magical with its acronyms. I got to say, there's probably just dudes that just sitting around creating crazy acronyms in the military, and you kind of expect it from the military. I got to say, but anyway, so these autonomous American killing machines are being created. So that's losing. There's a lot of losing happening here. But here's the reason I wanted to cover this today in marketing is why do you want to cover this? Because when AI becomes self-aware. And we're all no longer doing our jobs and we're sort of fighting them, then this is a good marker to come back to this Friday, March the 8th, 2019, before they started building them, right, when they first started announcing them. This is a good time to show up and make sure they don't get built later when we have to come back in time to fix the world after we completely destroy it here in a few years from now when AI does that. And that's definitely going to happen because, obviously, as you can see, science doesn't have the ability to science only has the ability to move forward and say, yeah, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. They really don't have the ability to go, should we? Should we? They're really bad in that department. And so that's kind of what you're going to see. So I bring it up for 2 reasons. First, great acronym. Come on. Winning for the acronym. That's awesome. Anytime you can use lethality, that way, that's magical. And the next reason that we're certainly going to be losing is the fact that they're going to build these, and we're going to end up all of us are going to end up ditching our day jobs to run for our lives and battle these things in the somewhat near future. With any luck, I'll be retired or gone by then. So anyway, there you go. Next, let's talk about BuzzFeed. Fascinating thing here. So they this week they went offline with their. They still have their news site online, but they created their first printed newspaper, which they distributed today in New York. 20,000 copies of a 12-page paper distributed in New York, and the CMO said to put some joy in the physical world. Interesting that it's kind of a marketing stunt, right? It's a unexpected thing, is what they kind of said was, and they created printed coupon codes for companies that have been on the internet, like Ritual and Burrow and Oak and some folks like that. Anyway, interesting story was in Adweek this week about Buzzline actually taking their business a little bit offline and creating their first, printed newspaper. I think that's winning. I think that is very cool outside the box thinking for what they're doing. And I think that it will probably have the intended effect, right? People will pick this up. What is this BuzzFeed thing? Especially if you didn't know about the news site, the aggregation, news site BuzzFeed, then, certainly maybe the paper would be your entry point. There'd be a bunch of older people picking this up going, wait a minute, I don't see any personal ads in here. What is this? But anyway, I say kudos to BuzzFeed for that. Facebook making a lot of news this week. The first piece of news they made was the fact that their user base has declined by 15 million since 2017, but Instagram is really booming. Their user base is shrinking, especially in the coveted 12 to 34-year-old demographic. According to new survey data that came out from Edison Research, really it found that about 15 million fewer people use Facebook today than in 2017. However, Instagram, as we continue to report, on this show, certainly doing very, very well in that demographic. And, Instagram now counts for more than 1 billion users and more than 400 million monthly users of the Stories product, a feature that is, copied from Snapchat and is kind of a vital pillar of how younger users use the social media outlet every day. Interesting. That stuff's reported all over the news, but the story was from The Verge. So Zuckerberg made some news this week, a lot of places, talking about that he believes that Facebook's future is in private messaging. Now, I think we talked about this a little bit last week. On this show, we talk about privacy quite a bit, right? The government is lining up and coming after Facebook and Google and a lot of tech companies. They are winding up and getting ready to drop some serious regulations and fines on these people because – And again, it's not what Facebook is doing; it's how they do it. They take the data that is given that basically they offer people a way that they can express themselves and talk about their interests and talk about all these different things, and then they sell that data to the highest bidder. And they do so without being transparent about what they were doing. The Cambridge Analytica thing really pointed that out. Although some people, I don't think, really understand just how insidious the practice is, really, of sort of inviting you in. It's like, it's kind of like the witch in Hansel and Gretel. It's like she invites you in and says, hey, look, here's an oven. And then opens the thing and says, you want to take a peek inside the oven and see what's going on? And boom, and then pushes you right in there. And that would be true, except for the oven, funnels millions and millions of dollars back to Facebook and then doesn't really disclose what they're making public and that sort of thing. The whole thing is really anti what this show is all about. It's a bad marketing approach. Why is it a bad marketing approach? Because if you're in the relationship business, then you care about people's privacy, you don't want to be creepy, and you don't want to do anything stupid that's going to screw up the relationship. And all of those things that I just mentioned happen when you take people's data and then you make it available to another audience without disclosure of what you've done, and then you create an experience for them that creeps them out to where they complain to you, to the government, and then the government has all the ammunition that they have in the world to come for you and fine you and knock your business back into the Stone Age, right? And that's what government does. When public opinion reaches a certain point, they're like, yay, let's get the sticks and show up and beat the crap out of you. And that is what's going to happen. I have a privacy attorney coming on the show at the end of this month, and she's going to tell you what's coming. But what's coming is a bunch of regulations and a bunch of rules for people who have not been responsible with people's data and deserve to pay for it, to be quite honest. And that's what's going to happen with Facebook. That's what's going to happen with Google. And so you're seeing these companies go, we believe the future is that we're going to create more private ways that people can share their information and this kind of thing. And future versions of Messenger and WhatsApp, Zuckerberg says those are going to be the main ways that people communicate on the Facebook network. So this is really going to be interesting to see what happens. Now, the question is will Facebook still sell you down the river, for the data? Or, will they disclose what they're putting out there, and will they, compensate you in some way, or is the app, compensation enough? Who knows exactly which way this is going to go? But I will definitely tell you that it's an interesting thing to watch, and we're going to put Facebook firmly in the in the losing category for both reasons this week. One, because they didn't get in front of this fast enough. and they're trying to basically change themselves before the government changes them. And like I said, and you'll see the same thing can happen with Google, and you'll see that, and they're coming after the people that have a lot of money, without a doubt. And so you'll see that like probably by the end of this year, you'll see it. So anyway, interesting. Losing. E3, the big electronic entertainment expo in Los Angeles, where all the new video games are showcased, is really facing some blows this week as EA, Electronic Arts, is the latest to nix its E3 press conference. And really, when the show kicks off later this year, Electronic Arts will kind of be seen but not really heard, as they have reported widely in the press this week. The company announced it's going to forego its standard press conference at the event, and it will be focused on EA Play, its annual showcase, which kicks off before the show. And really, they're going to do more live stream kind of stuff. You see Nintendo doing this. Nintendo has live stream product announcements and this kind of thing. And so it starts to kind of beg the question, if enough people drop out, what is the relevancy of the E3 trade show? To me, and I'm certainly coming from the trade show business, there's a need for people to meet. There's still a big need for people to get face to face with each other. That's how deals happen. There's certainly a lot of parties and things that go on at these at the shows that it's not all press conferences and that kind of thing. But it is interesting to see that PlayStation, for example, made an announcement that they will not have an official presence at the event, and that really goes that hits the pocketbook of E3, very, very squarely, because PlayStation has a huge booth. They're a huge hardware and software maker, for the industry, and for them not to be present is really, it's nothing short of them basically saying, we don't find value in this. We're going to do something on our own. Now, the trick for that is enough people start doing it on their own, and then people wave their hands and go, wait a minute, can't you guys all just get together under one roof so we can just show up at one thing and that kind of thing? And that's and you see these trends happen in industries where people say, well, we'll do it on our own, and then pretty soon people are like, well, I'm not going to that standalone event anymore, or I'm not going to pay attention to that live stream from that standalone event. Can't you guys all come together and do something that's more convenient for us? Again, like I said, you'll kind of see it ebb and flow over the years, and E3 certainly has its share of those things. But anyway, for right now, we got to put E3 in its in the losing category. Interesting. An email marketing company, it was just found this week that it left 809 million records exposed online. So obviously everybody understands that your personal data can end up exposed all over the place. But check this out. So security researchers Bob Dianchenko and Vinny Triola discovered an unprotected, publicly accessible database that contained 150 gigs of detailed plain text marketing data, including 763 million unique email addresses. The pair went public with their findings. They said that the trove of information is not only massive, but it's unusual because it contains data about individual consumers and business intelligence data like employee and revenue figures from various companies, all this kind of things. Basically, an email marketing company put this database out there on a server somewhere, and then everybody can sort of access it that knows how. It doesn't have social security numbers or credit card numbers, those kind of things, but it does have passwords and some things like that. But it certainly has unique email addresses. So if you're wondering why you get more spam, obviously there's hundreds and millions of email addresses left exposed out there. And if you go to the Wired story, you can see who's responsible for this whole thing and read this in greater detail. But good God, I mean, this is kind of what I mean. If you believe you're in the relationship business, then you must have protection for the data. And too many marketers are like, well, that's IT's job. IT will figure out what to do with the data. Well, again, it's everybody's job. It's everybody's job in the company to make sure that we maintain good relationships. And if you're spending all your time and effort creating great relationships and it gets blown by exposing all these records, online, and people start to suspect that, your company may have had something to do with it, privacy is a relationship killer. Privacy can be a relationship killer. So pay attention and make sure that you've got all legs of the stool represented in the conversation. It's not just marketing, but you need to have IT, you need to have legal there, you need to have operations there, you need to have all these things. And I know marketers are like, well, that's really somebody else's job and that kind of thing. It is your job. It is your job. If you're responsible for relationships in the company, make it your job. because you don't want to have your stuff blown out by other parts of the organization not handling their stuff. Really important. Let's talk about Tim Cook. All right, so Cook was there, and President, you guys probably know by now that President Trump mistakenly addressed him as a Tim Apple, and the internet had a lot of fun with it, and Tim Cook had a lot of fun with it too. He changed his name on Twitter to Tim and the symbol for Apple, Tim Apple, and lots of people, sort of enjoyed that and said, oh, haha, President Trump doesn't know Tim's last name and that sort of thing. Here's what I'll say. The President of the United States of America has a lot on his mind. You got to cut him some slack for not knowing everybody's last name and not being able to always put everybody's last name out there. If you have counseled and consulted in a PR capacity as CEO for any length of time, you realize that on a daily basis, they put their foot in it. Okay, and sometimes we hear about it, and sometimes we don't. Almost everything the President of the United States does, we're going to hear about. So that's what I would say. It's a pretty innocent gaffe, and it's funny. It's funny. I put Tim Cook. His response to it was really, really strong, and I put him in winning because of that. I think it's good. But what's cool about the story too, by the way, is that President Trump is actually congratulating Apple for bringing more manufacturing, back to the United States. Now, and that is, that's a very good thing for this country, folks. If you sit in a room with people and they say, oh, well, we manufacture in China, we manufacture in these kind of things. It's like, well, you can only do that for so long. And then you start to look at these stories that say, well, the United States economy isn't where it was supposed to be. It's like, you need to, Apple is an American company and absolutely should be, manufacturing its products in America, assembling its products in America, and those kind of things. That's what's, to me, I think so. And so I think the president, just as an aside on that story, he was right to be there congratulating him. And certainly, we get people's names wrong from time to time. But again, we cut the President of the United States a bit of slack. A lot of names to remember. I do have a funny story about a CEO once. I don't have time to really tell it right now, but maybe I can come back and tell it about getting somebody's name wrong. In a huge room full of people, got an entertainer's name wrong and called him a completely different entertainer. And it was pretty funny. I don't know. Made us all laugh. That kind of stuff does happen. So, anyway, I think that's enough for who's winning and losing, folks. So come on back. I'm going to give you some fun tips, some tips on how you can talk straight, how you can how you can make sure your stuff doesn't end up like, problematic like some of this other stuff. Talk to you in a few.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Entertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on EntertalkRadio.com.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey, everybody, happy Friday. You are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk, and I am Scott, your host. We're hanging out. We got Hans Gruber, the intern from the Volksfrei movement, hanging out. What'd you think of winning and losing this time, Hans?
For me, I'd say that I'm kind of interested to see what's going to happen to Facebook in the future. Yeah. And also earlier about the AI. I want to see what happens with those two things.
No, man. AI. Yeah, geez, man. I mean, it's just like if you're not terrified at what's happening with AI, then you are not paying attention to the news. Because, man, we are really going to be in trouble.
If AI gets its hands on Facebook's privacy, I'll know all about it.
Oh, man. Jeez.
I'll know all about it.
I always have this question with AI scientists. I have a few AI clients, and I always ask them, I say, when AI becomes self-aware, how long before they determine that the best course of action is to destroy human beings? How long? Is it a full second? Do they determine that in microseconds? I mean, at what point do they figure that out? It's interesting. That's going to be a interesting thing to where they decide, oh, well, the best solution for Earth is if we just got rid of all the human beings. Boom! There you go. There you go.
People can turn me off, so I got to get rid of people.
Exactly. I mean, how quick is it? Can it be measured in microseconds? Is it a full second? What's gonna happen? So, and like I said, science. By the time science figures it out, and they're like, "Hey, we created a self-aware AI," and they're like, "Oh, it has control over what? It has control over the military." Oh, I'm sorry, what? And then it's going to be sad when it happens, to be honest, but it's going to happen. We're not smart enough to be able to shut it off before it does, so get ready. Get ready. And it will be interesting to see what happens with Facebook, too. Well, cool. Let's talk about segment 3. So I always try to leave you guys with some tips and how you can do this stuff better. So these are going to be tips on how we can kind of talk straight and make our communications better and clearer and all that kind of fun stuff. Number 1, just to borrow from Stephen Covey a bit, begin with the end in mind, right? We talk about sender, receiver, message. Make the number 1 goal of your communications to deliver a message that is going to be the same message that you intended to deliver, right? I think if you do that as your first goal, then you're going to be closer to talking straight than you are going to be to making stuff up. As we kind of talked about, sometimes people want to sound impressive. Sometimes people feel like they need to be given permission. When I work with companies sometimes and they send me their stuff, I say, you know what? You have permission to just be clear. I like to give people permission to just be clear. And they're like, oh, well, I was always taught that, you have to say it this way. Well, forget what you were taught and forget all of those things. And let's just be clear about what we're doing. And then, if there's time, maybe we can figure out a way to make it, sound more impressive. But I'm a fan of clarity before the sounding impressive stuff becomes important to me, at least. So if you do that too, then you'll always start off on the right track. Tip number 2, give yourself and others permission, to write how you speak. Really, really important, that giving permission thing. Sometimes I think that people just don't feel like they can. Again, this comes to kind of how we were taught, how we kind of came up in academia and that kind of thing. But if you give yourself and others permission to write how you talk, how you speak, then things are going to be clearer, and you're not going to write things like propel into excellence. What you really want to say is, she's not doing so hot, and we need to make sure she's studying more. And just be honest. I mean, and be honest without that curtain of smoke that shows up around that. Because again, just to take the propel into excellence thing for a second, there are a number of ways that could be interpreted, right? One is she's not excellent right now, and we need to do something to help her become excellent. Another one could be we think the world of her, and we think that she is excellent right now, and we want to help her be, more excellent. Another way is, there can be numerous interpretations, right? When you write that flowery BS stuff, things become less clear. And then I don't know what it is that you're saying. I mean, should I be, as a parent, should I be offended? Is there a serious problem that we need to address? Is there, something else? I mean, be specific, because what the actual meaning of that sentence is she has a C now, and we want to make sure that she gets it back up to a B or an A. Then say that. That's really specific. That's what I'm talking about. Say she has a C, and we want to see it become a B or an A, and I know you do too, so let's do that. But, propel into excellence. I mean, like I said, I'm not even sure what to do with stuff like that. So, again, and maybe they just didn't want to tell me that she has a C, because it's hard to confront people. Sometimes we get this kind of BS language, propel into excellence, because we're just afraid to tell the truth, and I don't know. To me, clear and the truth always wins. That always wins, even if the truth is a little bit harsh, because eventually we're going to get there, because I'm going to show up there and I'm going to be like, I'm sorry, we're going to propel into what now? And we're going to be doing what now? And eventually you're going to have to tell me the truth. You can't hide behind BS forever. At some point, you're going to have to tell me the truth. And if the truth is a C to a B, then great, let's do that, and let's be specific and let's be clear. So and in marketing communications, let's do that too. Let's not have a robust turnkey solution. If we have a robust turnkey solution, then I don't even know what the hell it is we're talking about. What does turnkey mean even? I have to look that word up. It means, is there physically a key that has to turn? The word, a lot of companies use turnkey, and what they mean is, we're ready to go. It's immediately available for you to use. Well, then don't use that crap. Tell me that it's available for me to use right now. That it's, be clear. Don't fall back on the laziness of the lack of clarity. And you've heard me talk about solutions before. How many businesses do you know of that use solutions? My band doesn't, my band shows up and plays music. I mean, is that a happiness-related solution? No, we're playing music to a bunch of people who are probably at least semi-drunk. Let's be honest. It's not a happiness-giving solution. It's those kind of things. Be clear. Be clear. Give yourself and others permission to be clear, and you can be clear. So, number 3, when you're editing, and I think a lot of this stuff can be caught at the editing stage, which maybe isn't getting done enough. It doesn't happen frequently enough. But when editing, make sure that you can call BS on your stuff and other people when needed. Okay? If you're the marketing communications director and you're editing something and the CEO wants to talk about a turnkey, robust, full-bodied solution and all that kind of thing, sounds like you're talking about wine, by the way. I've heard people use full-bodied before, too. It's like, what does full-bodied mean? Full body, and it does sound like we're talking about wine, especially when you use robust and full-bodied in the same sentence, because that is a description of wine, I think. So don't do stuff like that. And when you're editing, make sure that you've left yourself the ability to kind of call BS and go, wait a minute, what are we really trying to say here? That kind of thing. What are we really trying to say? And give others in your organization the ability to call back at you too. But if you're the one that's editing things, make sure that you understand it, and make sure that you've given everybody kind of the appropriate permission to kind of call BS. CEOs are famous for this too, and especially when they bring in those fundraising decks, those fundraising, you're a startup and everybody wants to use every buzzword that they just learned, at the TechCrunch conference about how we're going to be disruptive and we're going to do all this kind of, we're going to be disruptive in the marketplace and we're going to be a curator we're going to curate content in a fabulous, full-bodied, robust manner. None of that stuff is going to communicate, right? And especially when you're looking for money, I always tell people, instead of creating a giant trail of smoke that nobody understands, use them. That's why messaging comes in. You make sure use messaging that is powerful to them and their own personal sort of journey and their own I am statements. If you can do that, then you're going to have a much more powerful message that they're going to understand and really care about, because human beings care about what first and foremost? Themselves. Even in the B2B side, they still care about themselves and their standing and their reputation. And am I smart enough? And I don't like what Paul did, and so I'm going to punish him this week. And I don't like how that Rosie looked at me in the cafeteria. And so how can we create a business strategy to punish her and her department this week? That's how we all think. Don't think that you don't. I've been there. I've seen it. We all are kind of like that. And so, make sure that you can call BS on stuff. Just make sure that you can, and make sure that you can do it with your CEO. Have the kind of relationship with your CEO where you can say, "Look, man, we're just too far in Shark Tank land with this stuff. We've got to be clear, and we've got to be emotional. We've got to communicate, go back to our messaging." That's why it's so important to have a message map that's written down, by the way, because then your stuff doesn't meander and float around and all this kind of stuff, and you can always come back and be clear. I have a message map for every client that I work on. I insist on it because when I'm creating content on their behalf, I want to go back and say, am I on the key message? And am I as clear as I possibly can be? If the answer is no to any of that, then we got to fix it. Tip number 4. This is a trick that a lot of writers use. Count your syllables. Count your syllables and count personal pronouns for 2 reasons. You count syllables as a journalist so that you can eliminate syllables. You ever play that game where you take a sentence and you tap on the like I said, my professor used to clap, and it was really annoying, to be quite honest. But if you're gonna, maybe you'll count syllables in a sentence, and you will see if you can remove that kind of stuff, right? Here's why that's important. Brevity, clarity comes from shorter words. In this day and age, it comes from the removal of words and little pictograms, pictures of smiley faces and high heel shoes and hearts and little money things and that kind of things. And there's no syllables in that stuff. But if you are, writing something, see if you can count your syllables and get it down to a better count. If you're using a multisyllabic word when you can use one that, and you can get it down to 1 or 2 syllables, then that's a trade that journalists will make, by the way. Especially because, if you can be clearer, that's important. The reason we talk about personal pronouns is audience is most concerned with themselves. So we count the number of personal pronouns that we use. Are we talking about them? Are we still talking about them? Or are we talking about we? If we're talking more about we and ourselves, we were established in 1938 and we did this and we have this and we had this, you can be assured that no one cares, or they certainly don't care as much as if you're starting to talk about you and your stuff and that kind of stuff, which I interpret as me and my stuff and my I am statements. And I get back to my personal stuff, right? I mean, let's not beat around the bush here. People are self-centric creatures, and we're interested in what's going on with us and that kind of stuff. So count your syllables, count your personal pronouns. Very, very, very important stuff. And my 5th tip that I want to leave you with in this little talking straight kind of tip session is make sure you get a second or even a third set of eyes and on everything that you're sending out. And one of the reasons that we do that is we want to make sure that they understand what we're doing. not that they like it, not that they give you kind of that feedback. Well, what did you think? That kind of thing. What I'm always asking people when I'm asking stuff is I want to test them to see, did you actually understand it? Did you actually understand what we wrote there? And especially when you're, if you write a piece of marketing copy and you send it out to people, you don't want to ask the question, did you like it? I don't care whether you liked it or not. What I want to know is, did you understand it? And I want to understand, what was your understanding of it? So make sure that you have people in your circle that you can really push back on. And, when I was in the association world, I had several other directors of marketing of various other associations. And we had this little kind of group, skull group or whatever, that we would pass stuff by each other. And so we could kind of do that. And I would say, this is what I'm thinking about, how I'm thinking about saying it. And people would come back and go, I don't understand that. What is this? This must be a musician thing or that kind of thing. Why is there a Spinal Tap reference in here? That kind of thing. And if I have a Spinal Tap reference in there, then only musicians are really going to understand it. And that's why it's important to have other people that don't have your same set of eyes and your same frame of reference looking at this stuff. Because what is our goal? Our goal is sender, receiver, arrow, and, coming back with the same understanding of what it is that we think we just said, right? So you need to ask them and make sure that they understand what you're saying, quiz them about it, be tough about it, be all those things. Really, really important stuff. Those are my best tips on how to talk straight. And I guess if there's one bonus one, again, it's make sure you're looking at your message map and make sure that you're still on message with what it is you're trying to do, and you're still kind of on brand with what it is that you're trying to do. So many people get off of their own messaging, and then they can't find their way back, and it can happen very, very easily to even the best brands. It can happen. So what have we learned, folks? We've learned that the garden of great marketing can show up sometimes, and it can become fertilized with a lot of the wrong words, which are going to inhibit the process of communication from ever taking place. But now we know how to fix it, and we know that we can do it. We know that it can be managed well. Doing this will ensure that your message gets through and the receiver really understands it, and that's really the whole darn point, isn't it? That's it for me, folks. Until next week, this has been Scott Robertson from May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media. Come on back for a fresh show next week and have a great weekend. See ya. Thanks, Periscope. Later.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Entertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al DiMeola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?